Welcome to Colonie TV, the governmental educational channel for the town of Colonie.
All right, well, welcome to Getting to Know You. My name is Joe Nash. Today we're talking to Trish Washburn. We're going to be talking about autism because April is Autism Awareness Month, so welcome, Trish. And Trish is going to host a movie here at our library. It showed nationally all across the country last year. It's called The United States of Autism. It's a documentary that Trish was involved in with her family. It's going to be here at the library on Monday night, April 7th at 6:30. So before we talk about the movie and everything, why don't we start with, this is Autism Awareness Month, why don't we start with the basic question, or what is autism? And I should say, before we start, you have two children, what they say on the spectrum. You can explain that term. Buddy, who is 13, and CJ, who's 11. So why don't we start with some definitions, and then I'll ask you about, some other things.
Well, autism, it actually, the diagnosis changed recently. So instead of it being broken down into different categories, some of the categories that used to be in the DSM-4 are PDD-NOS, Asperger's, and because that diagnosis changed in the DSM-5, now it's called the Autism Spectrum disorder. So it encompasses all of the diagnoses together. And there's great controversy actually in the autism community as to whether this is a good change or a bad change.
Well, what does that term autism spectrum mean? That might be the...
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, it's funny. When someone says that a person is on the autism spectrum, you can't really define it because every person with a autism spectrum disorder is different. Mm-hmm. So my son, for example, he would be considered what people consider higher functioning. Mm-hmm. So he's able to talk, and he's able to communicate back and forth, and he's able to do a lot of his daily living skills by himself. But some people who have an autism spectrum disorder aren't able to do those things, and they need help. They need constant supervision, and they need to be helped to take out into the community and additional supports in their life throughout their life, even when they're adults,
so
not only when they're children.
It can go from everything from someone who needs 24-hour day care to someone maybe in a classroom or at work, you wouldn't even know they had it, kind of.
Right, that's right. And
well, that's an awful wide range.
Right, that totally is. And in fact, people call it, some people call it the invisible disability. Okay. And it's, with my children, it's constantly educating people that they have a disability, mm-hmm. and, reminding them that they need help, and that, that they although you can't see it, yeah, they still aren't able to do some things that, a typical person can do.
Now, your children are 13 and 11. When did you first become aware that there was possibility of they had autism or were on this?
My son, he was showing signs of some delays, and actually I'm one of the lucky ones. My mother is a retired school psychologist, and she noticed some things, and I was a new mom. And I really didn't notice, or maybe, to be honest, I was probably a little bit in denial, because I think that a lot of us go through that. And so I went and I got him tested, and he got services through early intervention. And he was about 18 months when he was diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder. And at that time, it was called PDD-NOS. Oh, okay. So it's kind of middle of the road autism. My daughter, on the other hand, it talks about actually in the movie, I knew that she was on the spectrum since she was a very little baby, young baby, I'd say at least one. And I was I spent many, many years trying to get her diagnosed properly. She was diagnosed with many other things. And
Is that common in trying to get a diagnosis? Is that?
it's my belief, in my opinion, that girls are often diagnosed incorrectly, and I think that may skew some of the numbers.
Okay.
They say that for every 4 boys, there's 1 girl that's diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder, and I think that the numbers are higher than that because they're being diagnosed with really significant disabilities or mental health issues instead of being diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder.
Well, is there any? Can you speculate on why would the girls be diagnosed differently? Is there any information on that or research or?
Well, again, I think that part of it is when the tests and different things are made, they're looking for the ways that a boy presents with autism, and boys present differently than girls. Girls often have social issues, but they're, they might be quiet, and that's, a girl being quiet is not, that's not so like, wow, wow, she's so different. Or, she might have social issues, but she's able to acclimate herself a little bit better than a boy is, and doesn't stand out as much. As a girl gets older, though, the differences are more apparent, and often girls, just like my daughter, who was diagnosed this past summer at 10 years old, girls are diagnosed later instead of earlier, like my son, who was.
Oh, wait, she
18.
was only diagnosed at age 10?
That's correct.
And then your son was diagnosed at 18 months.
That's correct.
Now,
Yeah.
did you spend, like you said, with your son? Did you spend 10 years trying to?
My son, he was diagnosed early, and thanks to my mom. And we were able to get him lots of supports. He had early intervention. He had preschool services. He had services right at the get-go at school, and he also, pretty young, at about 5 years old, he got services through the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities. So he was on his way to getting the help that he needed early.
So what was the breakthrough for your daughter that finally at age 10 she was, or was it some kind of breakthrough, or what was, I don't.
I think it has to do a lot with persistence. I didn't give up. I knew all along. And I think that also, to be honest, I think the movie helped, because the movie talks about how it was difficult for me to get a diagnosis for CJ, and it talks about our struggles in getting that. And a lot of the people that were available to give a diagnosis were at the movie.
Oh, okay.
Last year.
Well, before we talk about the movie, I just want to say I was reading a little bit about your story here. You seem to have been, because you have 2 children in this autism spectrum, you seem to be very, very involved with a lot of organizations, a lot of groups, a lot of things. How did you, besides the fact that obviously it's your 2 kids, but how did you get involved with all these different organizations and groups?
Well, I think part of it, every family sort of chooses something that's important to them, and how they're going to go about helping their child with autism. And my motto is exposure, 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 which means I take my kids everywhere. I do everything I possibly can with them, because I think that that's going to help them be able to function better in the world.
Well, you just act like a normal family.
Right. And I think because of that motto, I met a lot of people in the autism community, because we're always out doing these different things. Some people believe that, the diet is the most important thing, so they work a lot of time on that. Every family is different, like I said, but again, mine is exposure, exposure, exposure. So a lot of the things that I became involved in, or people I've met, are because of my motto.
Oh, okay.
And So I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, well, why don't we talk the movie?
Okay.
Trish is going to host the movie here, the United States of Autism, Monday night, April 7th at 6:30 in the library. This movie is a documentary. The maker's name is, I forgot the name.
Richard Everts and the Tommy Foundation are
Okay.
the.
He went around the country and he filmed 20 families that have different, I guess you could say, are they, I haven't seen it yet, but like you were talking about at the beginning, are the 20 families, is the spectrum very wide of the?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So how did he choose the 20 families, and how did your family get chosen to be in this nationally made documentary?
It's a good question. Well, some of the families he knew personally.
Okay.
So he had asked them to be a part of the film, and
Now he has children.
he has a son.
Okay.
With severe autism,
Okay.
Tommy.
Okay.
Named
I
after
think
the
I saw
Tommy
him in the
Foundation.
trailer. Yeah.
Yep.
So he started with people he knew. Okay.
Yep. And then after that, he sort of did a search, and he posted on Facebook, on the web, and he was doing a search for finding families that were affected by autism, and he asked people to fill out an application. Would you be interested in filling out an application and being a part of this film? So
You saw
I
this?
saw it.
Oh, okay.
And I said, wow, this is interesting, because I'm constantly looking at things related to autism. I'm like, I'll just fill it out and see what happens. And he received hundreds of applications, and he went through all of them. And about a month later or so, we get a call that we were chosen to be part of the film, and it was sort of a shock because I just did it for fun, like I didn't think that it would actually happen.
Well, what was in the application? You had to sort of try and give a capsule summary of the situation, and
Right, he asked about our family,
Yeah.
Specifics about our family, and what would people want to know about us? Just basic questions. It was about 5 pages of application, and
well, the 20 families chosen, you can see it on the website. It's called U.S. of Autism, all one word, for the movie. These 20 families are literally all over the United States, and he drove around. I think he said for 40 days, and filmed everybody 2 or 3 days each. But they were everywhere. I think he drove, I don't know, what did he say? He drove like 20,000 miles or something?
Yep. I think it was 25,000 miles he drove, from all the way from Pennsylvania to California and back. And he popped along and saw families as he went.
So once you were chosen, that must have been, oh no, now what do we got to do? We got to begin this thing.
Yes, because this is all new to me, and it was, and then it was the process of, what is he going to come and see when he's here, and like who does he want to meet, and
so your time in the movie is maybe 5 or 10 minutes.
Yep.
But he filmed for 3 days. So
no, one day.
One day.
Yep, one day. He started bright and early in the morning.
So tell us about what that was like that whole day, and what he did and followed you around. And
Well, meeting him was pretty neat. We were literally sitting. We met him at Easter Seals Camp, Colonie, and I was waiting in the parking lot, and he pulled up in back of us. We were sitting in the car, and I wasn't sure if it was him or not. And so I got out, and it was him, and then we, hugged and was like, "Oh my gosh, so great to meet you! I can't believe you're here."
You were supposed to meet at the Easter Seals Camp. Okay.
Yep. That was the very first time we met because he was going to film right away.
Okay.
It was like business right away.
Yeah.
And then we went to Easter Seals Camp Colonie, and he started taping the kids and talked to us a little bit, and talked to Mitch and Chuck, who are the director and the assistant director of Easter Seals Camp Colonie. And there's some footage actually in the movie from there. And then from there, we went back to my home, and he interviewed me and Gary, their kid's dad, and we talked about autism and how it affects us and different things. We also had a newspaper reporter following us around too. That was interesting. And so then after that, we left and we went to the legislative office building, and we talked to Senator McDonald.
Okay.
And and there is some footage of Senator McDonald not in the actual film, but it's in the extras.
Now was it a grandchild with autism?
Yes.
Okay.
He has 2 grandchildren on the autistic spectrum, 2 boys. And
so he talked about things that the legislature does and
yep,
trying
actually,
to help.
Actually, at that time, I was helping with many other people to try to pass the autism insurance bill, which eventually did pass,
right.
and it is now law. But at that time, because it was 4 years ago, we were still working on that. So from there, we went back home and we ate. And then after that, our last trip was up to Everybody Counts Physical Therapy, which is up in Bern, New York. And that's a place that provides hippotherapy, which is a form of therapy done on horses. And he did some taping and footage. Footage again is on the film of Buddy and CJ.
Now, what is hippotherapy? What is that?
Hippotherapy is it's actually the horse. People think that hippotherapy is an actual therapy like speech therapy, occupational therapy. It isn't. The horse is actually used as a prop, like a ball would be used in a therapy, and it's amazing because it uses all of your senses. I mean, think about it. When you go into a barn, you smell things right away, right? And the pressure of the bouncing on the horse, and the visual things that you see, and it just gets everything going. And anyway, my son and my daughter had therapy there for 5 years. And so they wanted to see
what that was like. And they did that for 5. Now, did that help them?
Yes, I think so greatly. They worked with Joan Martelli, who's the co-owner of Everybody Counts Physical Therapy, and also Terry Gunther, who actually works for a local school district, and she's an OT, an occupational therapist. So they did. Joan Martelli does physical therapy, and Terry Gunther does occupational therapy. So they worked with both of those.
Okay, now were the kids, are Buddy and CJ in the movie too? Will we see them?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There's lots of footage of them. Yes. There's lots of footage of them, playing at Easter Seals Camp Colonie and on the horses. Terry Gunther is actually in the film.
So it was a one-day sort of whirlwind of filming, and then from the day of filming to the day the movie came out, how long of a time period was that?
Well, that's a process in of itself. They they had to look through all of the footage, hours and hours and hours and hours of footage. And
for all 20 families.
Right, and break it down. He said
it
was a daunting task, according to Richard, Richard Everts is the person who went around. And, they chose the different pieces. Then they had viewings to see if people liked the movie before they actually released the movie. So they came and taped 4 summers ago. So this is a pretty long process of getting everything together.
It came out in 2013, right? Is that
right? Right. Yep.
And it showed all across America. I noticed on the website, many of the showings were sold out. They showed it at excuse me. They showed it at Proctor's last year, and you said it was almost a full house. It was 250 people or so.
It was a great turnout. We raised lots of money for autism. All the money raised was for
now, what did Buddy and CJ think of seeing them on film? But they had filmed it like 3 or 4 years ago.
That was pretty amazing because they look very different. Actually, to be honest with you, I cried. Because seeing them like that. And CJ had in the film, especially on a big screen, her eyes. She has deep blue eyes, and I was like, wow, she's so, I know she's my daughter, but I was like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. And there she is on this big screen, and I was just, it was mesmerizing, to be honest with you. And they were mesmerized too. They were completely quiet during the entire thing, and they really liked it, I can tell.
So what has been I noticed on the website this movie did get some good reviews. And like you say, we don't have time to go through all 20 families, but just could you give a couple examples? You've told your story. and the movie covers 20 different families. What are one or two of the other ones? Are they could you just give us an idea of what people will expect when they come to see the movie here in the library?
There's one person, a self-advocate. His name is Alex Plank, and he started a website called Wrong Planet, and it's for people who have Asperger's syndrome, and
which is part of the autism spectrum. Okay.
Yes, and it's sort of, I love his interview. There's extras with him too as well. But he talks about his Asperger's syndrome and what he thinks about Asperger's and some of the autism community, and about and it's interesting to see from his perspective, you know. And again, he started Wrong Planet, and he talks about how he said that some people on his site actually met and got married.
Really?
And then he said he's never been invited to any weddings, but but I thought that was pretty interesting. There's also a family who started a lemonade stand out in California, and their daughter doesn't have autism. It's her brother, her younger brother, who has autism, and she raises money. The daughter raises money by selling lemonade, and she's really cute and sweet, and they talk about how they make the lemonade and where they go to sell it and how it all started.
Okay. So that's Monday, April 7th, here in the library. Trish is going to host the showing of the movie, The United States of Autism. Well, why don't we talk about now, you mentioned Everybody Counts in East Bern and Camp Colonie, and you've mentioned the Easter Seal. What are some of the local organizations that you could really like to give a word about that have really been very helpful to you and supportive?
I would love to talk more about Easter Seals Camp Colonie.
Sure, that's what the official Easter Seals Camp Colonie. Okay,
right.
Yeah, sure.
And it's right at the town park. They're in Pavilion 2, which is the pavilion in the back, and you can go as a person with a disability and pay yourself, you know, as a family.
And this isn't just autism; it's any
disability.
Any disability. Okay,
Yep.
yes, very good.
Or there, some people, not everyone, but some people get approved through their school, CSE and board, to have Easter Seals Camp Colonie paid for.
Okay.
It's considered a 12-month program, so they call it Schools Without Walls, the School Without Walls, and so that's an option for people who live locally, who can get that approved through their CSE. Buddy and CJ have never been approved through the CSE. I've helped raise money, and Easter Seals Camp Colonie has helped with, you know, helping have them attend.
I understand that you and you helped to get the resolution passed by the town for a pass.
Yes. Actually, it was Buddy and I. Buddy.
Okay.
Again, my motto is exposure, exposure, exposure.
Yeah.
And back in the day, all of our money was spent on therapies and different things to help my kids, and I didn't have money to as little as it was to go to the town pool, and I was getting really upset. I'm like, you know, my kid, exposure.
Yeah.
I really need to take him to the pool, and that started with I wrote a letter. I actually wrote a letter about 7 years ago, and asked the town to see if an access pass, a New York State access pass, could be accepted at the town pool, and to enter the town pool for free. And what the New York State access pass is, it's a New York State pass that allows people with developmental disabilities and
of all kinds.
Of all kinds to enter New York State parks for free.
Oh, okay.
And you can be any age. A lot of people think that you have to be an adult.
Yeah.
You can be 5 and you can get the access pass as long as you get services through the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities.
Okay.
So then I just kept calling and asking them, you know, throughout the years, and you know, could we get this taken care of? And finally I was connected to the right person, and It finally happened.
I
It
know.
finally
Some
happened.
bureaucracy sometimes.
Yes,
All
yes,
things
yes.
takes a long
Yes,
time.
but it happened, and it was an amazing day. It was about 2 years ago, and we were at a town board meeting, and the resolution was put on the table. And every single board member said yes, yes, yes.
So it was a
yes.
unanimous vote.
It was a unanimous vote, and the crowd cheered.
Okay,
So it was really an amazing moment, and so anyway.
So do you spend a lot of your time at the pool now in the summer?
Well, it's funny. Well, they're older now, so
Yeah.
but they're harder to But they actually use the pool for Easter Seals Camp Colonie.
Okay.
They use it all summer long. So I have been with them, but not as much as I would have.
Yeah.
As
So
they were
so
younger,
Easter
but-
Seals Camp Colonie is a group you really like to champion here.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Well, is there another local group you wanted to mention, or you mentioned the place in Bern that does the hippotherapy. Is there any others you want to mention that are particularly close to your heart?
Yes, there's Stride.
Stride.
Yep,
Okay.
it's Stride, 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 and Mary.
Is that a Colonie group or a Capital District group?
It's Capital District,
Okay.
and it's all disabilities, not just autism.
Not just autism. Okay.
And Mary Ellen Whitney is the executive director, and she started the organization. She actually was a teacher in her previous life, and she saw a need for people with disabilities, all disabilities, to have opportunities for sports. So it's amazing program. It's all different sports. My children were involved in the swimming program, which I could tell you is pretty awesome. They were involved in sailing, which is amazing. My son, when he was 9 years old, he sailed across Saratoga Lake completely by himself in a sailboat, and that never would have happened without this program.
Okay.
To think that, to help with self-confidence, my gosh, that's just amazing. So they also do skiing. My children haven't done the skiing, but I heard wonderful things about it. And many other sports, bowling. My kids did bowling.
Now, do they have a website? We can put it on this.
They do. They do.
Do you know what it is?
I believe it's www.stride.org.
Okay, we can look it up before.
Yeah.
And that's they help people not just with autism, but all disabilities, kids to get involved with all kinds. It sounds like all kinds of sports.
All kinds of sports.
Bowling, skiing, sailing. Okay.
Yep.
Very
And
good.
they also, which is another amazing thing, Congressman Chris Gibson made Mary Ellen Whitney aware of this land that used to be Girl Scout land over in Columbia County, and she bought it for like $5.
Oh, okay.
So she has about, no lie, the program has about, I'm not sure how much acreage, but 80 acreage, a big amount of acreage where they do overnight programs. My kids have gone there on the weekends and just slept there in tents, and so that's another amazing thing. And the reason why they acquired it is because Mary Ellen is also involved with Wounded Warriors.
Oh, okay, yes,
So
I've heard.
that's another huge passion of hers. So.
All right. Well, it sounds like your motto, exposure, 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 is you're a great advocate for autism. Before we end here, and I'll mention the movie one more time, what would you really like people to take away from Autism Awareness Month? If there's one or two things you could stress about this condition or whatever, that's not the right word, but other than just being aware of it, is there one or two things you really like to highlight about people on the autism spectrum you could?
I think that the most important thing is you meet one person with autism, and it's important to realize that and not have limitations on a person or not expect too much from a person. You have to get to know that individual person, because every single person, like you and I are different.
Yeah.
Every single person on the spectrum is vastly different.
Okay.
And I think that's probably the most important thing that I would like to say about that.
Okay.
Yep.
So now that's going to be Monday night, April 7th, 6:30 in the library. Trish is going to host the showing of the movie, The United States of Autism. You can probably, when it's over, you have a little discussion. People can ask questions. You can tell people about it, a lot of the groups you've mentioned. So thank you for being here, for being an advocate.
Thank you for
making us
asking.
aware of Autism Awareness Month, which is all of April. So thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thank you.
And we'll see you next time on Getting to Know You.